Welcome to The Quiet Truth, where a lay Catholic comes to grips with the secular culture. I'm Tom Borak. This is the first in a series of videos, so it's only fair that I warn you in advance. This is a Catholic series, and in this series I have no interest in arguing with atheists or even with non-Catholic Christians about matters of faith. Also, my ideas are not very culture friendly, so if you are looking for someone who's swept up in the spirit of Vatican II, to make the one true church founded by Jesus Christ and entrusted to St. Peter compatible with the worldview of, say, Kim Kardashian or Roman Polanski or Donald Trump or even Nancy Pelosi, forget about it. Over time, I intend to persuade you that the secular culture is monstrous and monstrously powerful and dangerous. It is monstrous because it sends an overwhelming array of messages that are evil, destructive, and often downright stupid. It is powerful and dangerous because it sends them in a way that can easily overwhelm our poor, limited monkey brains. Oh no, maybe I should have also warned you that I'm not particularly impressed with the human mind. One of the ways the culture tricks us is by appealing to our inflated sense of our own intelligence while appealing to our weaknesses, our foolishness, and our predisposition to sin. Let's begin by considering just one cultural message that's enormously subtle and powerful, yet also mindless and stupid. I call it the self-fulfilling description of atheism. It started when what we now call the media consisted entirely of the publishing industry, but it grew and developed through the era of radio, the era of television, and it's reached its present horrible climax in our present era of multiple internet sources of media. At one point, the fictional heroes of Western literature were mainly God-fearing Christians, Catholics or Protestants of particular denominations. The operation of free market capitalism, however, has put an end to that. Media providers quickly realized that fiction with protagonists who were members of particular Protestant denominations were not as profitable as fiction that could appeal to a wider audience. Purchasers, listeners, and viewers of fiction wanted to identify with the heroes who they could imagine shared their own particular beliefs. So, for a while, the media offered heroes who belonged to generic or non-denominational Protestant churches. When I was a child, the popular Bonanza Western had heroes who regularly worshipped at a kind of generic Protestant church. Nonetheless, just as I could tell that the Cartwrights were not Catholic, I'm sure that Baptists could tell that they were not Baptists, and Anglicans could tell that they were not Anglicans, and of course, Jewish viewers could not really identify with them either. Eventually, in my lifetime, nearly all fiction came to feature heroes who never mentioned any religious faith at all. Even when faced with impending violent death, they would make no mention of their God. While this was going on, the USA was overwhelmingly composed of believers in the Judeo-Christian God. Non-believers were a tiny, tiny minority at this time. Presumably, the majority of writers, publishers, and producers were believers as well. Nevertheless, in the latter half of the 20th century, in the fictional universe of novels, TV shows, and films, believers were a tiny minority and were almost never the heroes. Viewers and readers, especially younger viewers and readers who spent thousands of hours in this fictional universe, picked up a subtle but powerful message that the overwhelming majority of Americans were atheists who only paid lip service to the religion of their ancestors. I was one of the many victims of this powerful but mindlessly stupid message. When I was a young man, I asked myself whether or not faith in God seemed reasonable, and I decided that it did not seem reasonable because I felt in my heart, or in some part of my being, that other people didn't believe. I had spent so much time reading hundreds, perhaps thousands of novels, and so many hours watching TV and films set in an atheist universe where the admirable people were all unbelievers, that it seemed the only reasonable and mature point of view was to go along with the majority and reject God. But of course this was a phony majority, an imaginary majority. It wasn't until several decades later that I was able to see the economic reason for all this atheist literature and to see that it had been a lie, that the real world of my youth was a world of believing Christians and Jews. Of course, by that time, the lie had begun to work substantial changes in the American population. The percentage of atheists and agnostics is growing by leaps and bounds. And even churchgoers and temple-goers often reject a real and personal God for a God who is closer to being just a metaphor for good. Individuals raised on the subliminal message that most people don't take God seriously try to reconcile that message with the faith of their fathers and often fail. Even the one true church was infected with this watering down of the faith, all because of an unspoken message sent by publishers and producers, most of whom, like most Americans, were men and women of faith. Notice that the message was a lie, an obvious and stupid lie, but one that was extremely powerful, persuasive, and damaging. That's only one of the innumerable false, dangerous, destructive, and stupid cultural messages that the struggling Catholic layperson must face down and overcome. More to come in our next installment. Thank you for your kind attention.